In a world where respect is earned through strength and skill, sometimes the most dangerous weapon is the one nobody sees coming. What happens when years of mockery and dismissal collide with a truth so shocking it changes everything? This is the story of Maya Chen, a quiet woman whose silence hid secrets that would make grown Navy SEALs question everything they thought they knew about courage, sacrifice, and the true meaning of service. Some stories begin with a bang. This one begins with whispers, laughter, and a reckoning that no one saw coming. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Blackwater training facility as Maya Chen adjusted her rifle scope for the third time. Around her, the chatter of military contractors and retired Special Forces operatives filled the air like static from a broken radio. She had grown used to being the only woman on the range, just as she had grown used to the whispers that followed her every move. "Look at her, trying to keep up with the big boys," came a voice from behind her. Maya didn't turn around. She recognized the speaker as Jake Morrison, a former Army Ranger who never missed an opportunity to remind everyone about his service record. His laugh was harsh and cutting. "I give her maybe 3 shots before she starts flinching." Maya continued her methodical preparation, checking her breathing, adjusting her position on the mat. The target stood 800 meters away, barely visible to the naked eye. The wind was shifting, coming from the southwest at about 7 miles per hour. She calculated the adjustments needed, her movements precise and economical. $20 says she doesn't even hit the target, another voice chimed in. This was Danny Torres, a former Marine who had made a career of doubting anyone who didn't fit his narrow definition of a warrior. "Look at her, all quiet and focused. Probably never held a real rifle before this job." The job. Maya almost smiled at that. 3 months ago, Blackwater had hired her as a marksmanship instructor, a position that had raised eyebrows throughout the facility. The decision had come from higher up, from people who had seen her resume and knew her capabilities. But the men on the ground level, the ones who trained here daily and considered themselves the elite of the elite, they saw only what they wanted to see, a small, quiet Asian woman who didn't belong in their world. "She's probably some bureaucrat's daughter," Jay continued, his voice carrying across the range. "Got the job through connections, not skill. These diversity hires are killing the industry." Maya's finger found the trigger. She had heard variations of this conversation dozens of times over the past 3 months. The assumptions came as regularly as the sunrise. They assumed she was inexperienced because she was quiet. They assumed she was weak because she was small. They assumed she didn't belong because she was different. She took her first shot. The sound echoed across the range, sharp and final. Through her scope, Maya watched the bullet strike dead center of the target, punching a clean hole through the bullseye. She worked the bolt smoothly, chambering the next round without lifting her eye from the scope. "Lucky shot," someone muttered. The second shot followed quickly, striking just millimeters from the first. Maya's breathing remained steady, her heartbeat calm and controlled. This was the zone she had learned to enter years ago, a place where noise and doubt and external pressure simply ceased to exist. The third shot grouped so tightly with the first 2 that they appeared to be a single hole from this distance. The chatter had stopped. Maya was aware of this change in the atmosphere, but she didn't acknowledge it. She was in her element now, doing what she had been born to do. Shot after shot, she worked through the magazine with mechanical precision. Each bullet found its mark with devastating accuracy. "What the hell?" Danny's voice had lost its mocking edge, replaced by something approaching respect. "Did you see that grouping?" Maya finally lifted her head from the scope, her dark eyes scanning the target through binoculars. The shots had created a single ragged hole at the center of the bullseye. At 800 meters, with iron sights, it was the kind of shooting that separated professionals from pretenders. "Not bad for a diversity hire," she said quietly, her voice carrying just enough edge to cut through the morning air. Jake Morrison approached her position, his swagger replaced by curiosity. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" Maya began breaking down her rifle, each movement efficient and practiced. "Here and there," she replied, offering nothing more. The truth was more complicated than that. More dangerous, and infinitely more painful than these men could possibly imagine. Maya had learned to shoot in places they had only heard about in classified briefings. She had learned precision under conditions that would have broken most of them, but that was a story for another time, buried under layers of operational security and personal grief so deep that she rarely allowed herself to examine it. "Come on," Jake pressed. "You don't get shooting like that from weekend courses. That's military precision. What's your background, Maya?" Shouldered her rifle case and gathered her gear. "I teach marksmanship," she said simply. That's what you need to know. But Jake wasn't satisfied with evasions. Over the following weeks, he made it his mission to uncover Maya's background. He asked around the facility, checked with contacts in various agencies, even tried running informal background checks through friends in the intelligence community. Each inquiry came back with the same result. Maya Chen was a ghost. Her employment record at Blackwater was clean but brief. Before that, there was a gap of several years. Before the gap, she had worked as a civilian contractor, but the details were classified. Before that, another gap. It was as if she had appeared from nowhere, fully formed and impossibly skilled. The mystery only deepened when Captain James Rodriguez arrived at the facility for advanced training. Rodriguez was a legend in the SEAL community, a man whose reputation preceded him into every room he entered. He had been deployed more times than most operators saw in their entire careers, had led missions in every major conflict zone of the past decade. Maya was conducting a long-range precision class when Rodriguez walked onto the range. She was demonstrating proper breathing techniques to a group of contractors, her voice calm and instructional. The students hung on her every word now. 3 weeks of consistently impossible shooting had earned their respect, even if it hadn't earned their friendship. The key is not to hold your breath, she explained, settling behind her rifle. You want to pause your breathing at the natural respiratory pause. That's when your body is most stable. She fired, the bullet striking a target at 1,000 meters with casual precision. The students nodded appreciatively, some taking notes. Maya had become something of a phenomenon at the facility, the quiet woman who could outshoot anyone who challenged her. Rodriguez watched from the back of the group, his trained eye taking in every detail. He saw the way she held herself, the economy of her movements, the unconscious scanning of her environment even while teaching. These were habits ingrained through years of operational experience, not picked up from civilian training courses. When the class ended, Rodriguez approached her. "Impressive shooting," he said. Maya began packing her equipment, her movements, as methodical as always. "Thank you, Captain. You know who I am?" Word travels fast in a place like this. Maya glanced at him briefly before returning to her gear. "Captain James Rodriguez, SEAL Team 6. 14 deployments, 3 Bronze Stars, 2 Purple Hearts. You're here for the Advanced Urban Warfare course." Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "You've done your homework. I make it my business to know who's training here." There was something familiar about her manner, something that tickled at the edges of Rodriguez's memory. He had met thousands of operators over the years, worked with countless snipers and marksmen, but there was something about Maya Chen that felt like an echo of something he couldn't quite place. "Where did you serve?" he asked directly. Maya's hands paused in their packing just for a fraction of a second. To most people, it would have been invisible. But Rodriguez had spent years reading micro-expressions, looking for tells in enemy combatants and allies alike. "I didn't serve," she said finally. "Bull." Rodriguez's voice was flat. "I've been around enough operators to recognize one. That shooting, that bearing, those habits, you're military. Special operations, from the looks of it." Maya zipped her rifle case with a sharp motion. "Believe what you want, Captain. It doesn't change the facts." She walked away before he could respond, leaving Rodriguez standing on the range with more questions than answers. But he was a persistent man, and mysteries had a way of gnawing at him until he solved them. That evening, Rodriguez made a secure call to a contact at Naval Special Warfare Command. "I need you to run a name for me," he said. "Maya Chen. Chinese-American, early 30s, about 5'4", exceptional marksman." The response came back within hours. "Nothing in our files, Jim. No record of anyone by that name in any special operations unit. You sure about the name?" Rodriguez was sure, but he was also beginning to suspect that Maya Chen wasn't the name she had been born with, or at least not the name she had served under. In the world of special operations, identities could be fluid things, shaped by operational necessity and classified missions. He began asking discreet questions around the facility. Old-timers, guys who had been in the business for decades. Most had nothing to offer, but a few gave him strange looks when he described Maya. Asian woman, exceptional sniper, maybe early 30s. Repeated Bill Hawkins, a former CIA operative who now worked as a consultant. Rings a bell, but I can't place it. Something from a few years back, maybe. Something classified? Everything from those days was classified, but there was talk, rumors about some kind of joint operation. Something that went sideways. Hawkins shook his head. "But that's all smoke and mirrors. Could be thinking of someone else entirely." Rodriguez filed the information away, but his curiosity remained unsatisfied. Maya continued her classes, her shooting remained flawless, and the mystery of her background deepened with each passing day. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. During a night shooting exercise, one of the students had a malfunction with his rifle. The bolt had jammed, and frustration was mounting as he struggled with the mechanism. "Let me see it," Maya said quietly, approaching the student's position. She took the rifle and, in the dim light of the range, began working with the bolt mechanism. Her movements were quick and sure, muscle memory guiding her hands even in near darkness. Within seconds, she had cleared the jam and handed the rifle back. "How the hell did you do that so fast?" the student asked. "Practice," Maya replied, but Rodriguez had been watching, and he had seen something that made his blood run cold. In the brief moment when Maya had taken the rifle, when the weapon had been positioned in her hands, he had seen a scar, a thin line running along her left forearm, barely visible in the dim light. He knew that scar, not personally, but from photographs, from classified briefings, from a mission report that had been sealed and buried so deep that most people would never know it existed. Rodriguez felt his world shift as the pieces began falling into place. The shooting skills, the tactical awareness, the gaps in her background, and now the scar. It was impossible, but the evidence was mounting. Maya Chen wasn't just a marksmanship instructor, she was a ghost from one of the military's most classified operations, a survivor of something so catastrophic that her very existence was a state secret. And tomorrow, Rodriguez knew he would have to decide what to do with that knowledge. Captain James Rodriguez spent a sleepless night staring at his hotel room ceiling, his mind churning through possibilities he wished he could dismiss. The scar he had glimpsed on Maya's arm matched exactly with a photograph buried deep in a classified file he had seen years ago, a file that technically didn't exist, concerning an operation that officially never happened. By dawn, he had made his decision. Rodriguez placed another secure call, this time to his commanding officer at Naval Special Warfare Development Group. "Admiral, I need to discuss something that requires absolute discretion," Rodriguez said, his voice tight with tension. "Go ahead, Jim. I believe I've encountered someone from Operation Nightfall." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for nearly 30 seconds. When Admiral Harrison finally spoke, his voice was grave. "That operation is classified beyond your clearance level, Captain, and more importantly, everyone from that mission is accounted for." "With respect, sir, I don't think that's accurate." Another pause. "I'll be at your location within 12 hours. Until then, you will discuss this with no one. Is that understood?" "Understood, sir." Rodriguez arrived at Blackwater that morning to find Maya conducting her usual precision class. She moved through her routine with the same calm efficiency, unaware that her carefully constructed world was about to unravel. But Rodriguez noticed something different in her bearing today, a subtle tension that suggested she sensed the approaching storm. "Today we're working on moving targets," Maya announced to her students. "The fundamentals remain the same, but you'll need to factor in lead time and target velocity." She demonstrated with a series of shots that defied belief, tracking targets moving at various speeds and distances. Each bullet found its mark with mathematical precision. The students watched in awed silence, several recording video on their phones. Jake Morrison, who had gradually shifted from skeptic to reluctant admirer, shook his head in amazement. "I've worked with military snipers for 10 years, and I've never seen shooting like that. Not even close." "It's all about practice," Maya replied, but Rodriguez caught the slight tremor in her voice. She was maintaining her facade, but cracks were beginning to show. During the lunch break, Rodriguez found an opportunity to approach her privately. "We need to talk," he said quietly. Maya's hands never paused in cleaning her rifle, but Rodriguez saw her shoulders tense. "About what, Captain?" "About who you really are. I've told you who I am. You've told me who you're pretending to be." Rodriguez moved closer, lowering his voice. "But we both know that Maya Chen is a constructed identity, don't we?" For the first time since Rodriguez had known her, Maya's composure cracked. Her hand stilled on her rifle, and when she looked up at him, he saw fear flickering in her dark eyes. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but the words lacked conviction. "Operation Nightfall," Rodriguez said simply. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Maya's face went pale, and she instinctively stepped back as if he had struck her. The rifle slipped from her suddenly nerveless fingers, clattering to the concrete floor of the range. "That's impossible," she whispered. "That operation is classified so far above your level that you couldn't possibly—" "I saw the scar on your arm last night," Rodriguez interrupted. The one from the shrapnel that nearly severed your radial artery, the same scar documented in a classified medical report from Walter Reed Army Medical Center, dated 4 years ago. Maya's breathing had become shallow and rapid. She looked around the empty range as if seeking an escape route, her tactical training warring with her emotional shock. "You don't understand," she said, her voice barely audible. "You can't understand." "Then help me understand. Because right now, I'm looking at someone who's supposed to be dead." The words hung in the air between them like a loaded weapon. Maya closed her eyes, and for a moment, Rodriguez thought she might collapse. When she opened them again, the careful mask she had worn for months had finally slipped away, revealing something raw and haunted underneath. "Dead would have been easier," she said. Before Rodriguez could respond, Admiral Harrison arrived at the facility with a small security detail. His presence transformed the atmosphere immediately. Conversations stopped as the Admiral and his men moved through the building with purposeful efficiency. Maya saw them coming through the range windows and knew her time was up. 4 years of carefully constructed anonymity, of building a new life from the ashes of the old one, were about to end. "Captain Rodriguez," Admiral Harrison's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "I need you and Miss Chen to accompany me to a secure area immediately." They were led to a windowless conference room that had been swept for surveillance devices. Admiral Harrison dismissed his security detail and closed the door, leaving the three of them alone with secrets that could reshape military history. "What I'm about to tell you," the Admiral began, "carries a classification level that requires congressional oversight to discuss. But given the circumstances, we have little choice." He opened a briefcase and withdrew a thick file marked with classification stamps that Rodriguez had never seen before. The cover simply read, "Operation Nightfall, Eyes Only." 4 years ago, Admiral Harrison continued, "we conducted a joint operation with Chinese military intelligence. The target was a terrorist cell that had acquired nuclear material and was planning attacks on both American and Chinese interests." Maya sat rigidly in her chair, her eyes fixed on the table in front of her. Rodriguez could see her fighting to maintain control as memories she had buried began to surface. "The operation required unprecedented cooperation between our Special Operations Forces and China's most elite units. Sergeant First Class Li Wei was selected to represent Chinese interests in the Joint Task Force." Rodriguez looked sharply at Maya. "Li Wei, not Maya Chen. Sergeant Li was one of China's most accomplished snipers," the Admiral continued. "Trained in psychological warfare, deep cover operations, and precision marksmanship. She had completed 17 successful missions over 5 years of service." "What went wrong?" Rodriguez asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. Admiral Harrison's expression darkened. "Intelligence failure. The terrorist cell had been tipped off about the operation. When our joint team moved in, they were walking into an elaborate trap." Maya spoke for the first time since entering the room, her voice hollow and distant. 12 operators went in. 3 came out. Sergeant Li was the sole survivor of the initial assault team. Admiral Harrison explained. "She held position for 18 hours, providing cover for the extraction of the only other 2 survivors while surrounded by hostile forces." Rodriguez felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. The scar on her arm. Shrapnel from an IED that detonated while she was providing covering fire, the Admiral confirmed. She refused medical evacuation until all surviving team members were safely extracted. "But that's not the worst part," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The intelligence failure wasn't accidental. Someone on our side sold us out." The revelation hit Rodriguez like a physical blow. "A mole?" "High level," Admiral Harrison confirmed. "Someone with access to operational details, timing, target intelligence. The investigation is ongoing, but the leak came from within the Chinese military command structure." Maya finally looked up, and Rodriguez saw a depth of pain in her eyes that no amount of training could have prepared him for. 9 good soldiers died because someone traded their lives for money. American soldiers, Chinese soldiers, all dead because of greed. The political ramifications were enormous, Admiral Harrison continued. Both governments agreed that the operation had never occurred. All records were sealed, all participants were sworn to secrecy. Sergeant Li was officially killed in action during a training exercise. "But she survived," Rodriguez said. "She survived, but Li Wei could never return home. The mole was never identified, which means she was perpetually at risk. So we created a new identity for her, a new life. Maya Chen was born from the ashes of that failed operation." Rodriguez stared at the woman sitting across from him, seeing her clearly for the first time. Not Maya Chen, the quiet marksmanship instructor, but Li Wei, a decorated Chinese special forces operator who had sacrificed everything for a mission that had been doomed from the start.
"Why Blackwater?" he asked.
Because it's the kind of place where people don't ask too many questions about backgrounds, Maya replied. Because I needed to do something with the skills I had, and this was the only thing that made sense. And because we've been keeping an eye on her, Admiral Harrison added, making sure she stays safe, making sure her cover remains intact. Rodriguez felt a surge of anger. So you've known where she was this whole time?
Of course we have.
Did you think we would abandon someone who sacrificed so much for a joint operation? Then why the secrecy? Why not bring her in, give her a proper position, recognition for her service? Maya laughed bitterly. Recognition? Captain, I'm a ghost. Officially, I died 4 years ago in a training accident. There is no leeway to recognize. And Maya Chen is just a civilian contractor with a talent for shooting. It's more complicated than that, Admiral Harrison said carefully. The investigation into the mole is still active. Bringing Sergeant Lee into the open could compromise that investigation and put her at risk. Rodriguez shook his head. So she just has to live in limbo forever, pretending to be someone she's not while the real perpetrators go free? Until we identify and neutralize the source of the leak. Yes. The room fell silent as the weight of the situation settled over them. Rodriguez looked at Maya with new eyes, seeing not just her exceptional skills but the tremendous burden she carried. To lose your identity, your country, your very existence in service to a cause that had been betrayed from within. It was a sacrifice beyond anything he had ever imagined. I'm sorry, he said finally, for pushing, for digging into your background. I had no idea what you'd been through. Maya met his gaze steadily. You were doing your job, Captain. In your position, I would have done the same thing. What happens now? Rodriguez asked Admiral Harrison. Now we decide whether Captain Rodriguez represents a security risk or an asset. The Admiral replied. His knowledge of this situation creates complications, but it also presents opportunities. What kind of opportunities? Admiral Harrison studied Rodriguez carefully, the kind that could help us finally close the book on Operation Nightfall. But that's a conversation for another time, with more people present. As they prepared to leave the secure room, Maya turned to Rodriguez one final time. Captain, the people here at Blackwater, they respect you. When they ask you about our conversation, about what you've learned about my background, what will you tell them? Rodriguez considered the question seriously. I'll tell them that Maya Chen is exactly who she says she is, a marksmanship instructor who's very good at her job. Nothing more, nothing less. Relief flickered across Maya's features. Thank you. But I have one question for you. What's that? Do you ever regret it? The sacrifice, the loss of your old life? Maya was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of hard-earned wisdom. Every day. But regret won't bring back the dead, and it won't catch the person who killed them. So I do what I can with what I have left. Rodriguez nodded, understanding more than he wished he did. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions about Maya's future, and his own role in her story. But for now, he was content to know that sometimes the most heroic acts are the ones that remain forever hidden, carried out by people who ask for nothing in return, except the chance to make their sacrifices meaningful. As they left the secure room and returned to the normal world of the training facility, Rodriguez watched Maya slip back into her carefully constructed persona. To everyone else, she was still just Maya Chen, the quiet instructor with exceptional shooting skills. But Rodriguez would never see her that way again. He now saw her for what she truly was, one of the bravest soldiers he had ever encountered, carrying secrets that would have crushed lesser people, continuing to serve even when service had cost her everything she had ever known. The afternoon training session proceeded normally, with Maya demonstrating advanced techniques to an appreciative audience. But Rodriguez noticed the subtle changes now. The way she moved, the constant environmental awareness, the tactical thinking that informed every decision she made. Jake Morrison approached Rodriguez after the session. Captain, you've been working with Maya for a while now. What's your assessment of her abilities? Rodriguez chose his words carefully. She's one of the finest marksmen I've ever encountered. Professional, dedicated, and absolutely trustworthy. Any idea about her background? We've all been curious. Some things are better left in the past, Rodriguez replied. What matters is what someone does moving forward, not where they came from. Jake nodded thoughtfully. Fair enough. But damn, that woman can shoot. Rodriguez watched Maya packing her equipment with the same methodical precision she brought to everything. Yes, he agreed quietly. She certainly can. But shooting, Rodriguez now understood, was the least impressive of Maya's many talents. Her true skill lay in survival, in adapting, in finding ways to continue serving even when the world had given her every reason to give up. As the day ended and the facility began to empty, Rodriguez made a decision that would change both their lives. He approached Admiral Harrison, who was preparing to leave with his security detail. "Admiral," Rodriguez said, "I'd like to volunteer for whatever operation you're planning." Harrison raised an eyebrow. "You don't even know what it is yet." "I know it involves helping her," Rodriguez replied, nodding toward Maya. "That's enough for me." Admiral Harrison studied the SEAL captain for a long moment. "It won't be easy, and it will be dangerous. The best missions usually are. Report to DevGuru headquarters Monday morning. We'll brief you then on Operation Second Chance." Rodriguez nodded. "Operation Second Chance. It's time to give Li Wei her life back," Admiral Harrison said. "And maybe, in the process, we can finally get justice for those 9 soldiers who died 4 years ago." As the Admiral's convoy departed, Rodriguez found himself alone with Maya in the emptying parking lot. She was loading her equipment into a nondescript sedan, the same car she had driven to work every day for 3 months. "Second chances are rare in our business," Rodriguez said. Maya paused in her loading. "What makes you think I'm getting one?" "Just a feeling. Sometimes the universe decides it's time to balance the scales." Maya closed her trunk and turned to face him. "Captain, in my experience, the universe doesn't care much about balance. If you want justice, you have to make it yourself." "Maybe so. But you don't have to do it alone." For the first time since he had known her, Maya smiled. It was a small, tentative expression, but it transformed her entire face. "That would be something new," she said. As she drove away into the gathering dusk, Rodriguez stood in the empty parking lot and wondered what Monday morning would bring. One thing was certain, the story of Maya Chen and Li Wei was far from over. In fact, he suspected it was just beginning. 3 weeks after Rodriguez's meeting with Admiral Harrison, Maya noticed subtle changes in the atmosphere at Blackwater. New personnel had begun appearing, individuals who carried themselves with the unmistakable bearing of intelligence operatives. They asked no questions and drew no attention to themselves, but Maya's trained eye caught details that others missed. She was conducting her morning precision class when her phone buzzed with a coded message she hadn't seen in 4 years. The text appeared to be a spam advertisement for insurance, but embedded within the innocuous words was a communication protocol she recognized from her days with Chinese special forces. "Target verification required. Sunset location. Come alone." Maya's blood ran cold. Someone from her past was reaching out. Someone who knew protocols that should have died with Operation Nightfall. The message could mean only one of 2 things. Either Chinese intelligence had finally found her, or the mole responsible for the failed operation was making contact. Neither option offered much hope for her continued anonymity. She finished the class on autopilot, her mind racing through possibilities and contingencies. For 4 years she had prepared for this moment while hoping it would never come. Now that it was here, she felt strangely calm. The waiting was finally over. "Maya," Jake Morrison called out as she packed her equipment. "You okay? You seem distracted today." "Just tired," she replied, forcing a smile. "Long night." But Jake had learned to read her moods over the past months, and something in her demeanor set off alarm bells. "Hey, if something's wrong, you know you can talk to us, right? We've got your back." The offer was genuine, and Maya felt a pang of regret for the friendships she would have to abandon. These men had started as skeptics, but they had gradually become something like family. Leaving them would be another small death in a life that had already seen too many. "Thanks, Jake. I appreciate that." She left Blackwater that afternoon knowing she might never return. The sunset location referenced in the message was a rest stop on Highway 95, about 30 miles south of the facility. It was the kind of place where travelers stopped briefly and moved on, where a meeting could occur without attracting attention. Maya arrived early and positioned herself with clear sight lines and multiple escape routes. Old habits from her operational days kicked in automatically. She carried her personal sidearm, a compact 9mm that she had trained with until it felt like an extension of her own hand. At exactly sunset, a figure emerged from the tree line behind the rest stop. Maya's heart nearly stopped when she recognized the approaching silhouette. Colonel Jian Wei, her former commanding officer in Chinese Special Forces, walked toward her with the same measured pace she remembered from their days together. "Li Wei," he said softly when he reached speaking distance. "You look well." "Colonel Jang." Maya kept her own weapon concealed but ready. "I thought you were dead." "As I thought you were. It seems we have both been living lies for the past 4 years." Jang moved into the light, and Maya saw that he had aged considerably since their last meeting. His hair had gone completely grey, and deep lines etched his face. But his eyes remained sharp and alert, the eyes of a man who had survived by never letting his guard down. "Why are you here, Colonel?" "Because it's time for the truth to come out. The real truth about Operation Nightfall." Maya felt her world shift slightly. "I know what happened. Intelligence failure. Someone sold us out." Jang shook his head slowly. "That's what we were told. What we were meant to believe. But the reality is far worse than either of our governments wanted to admit." He reached into his jacket slowly, producing a tablet computer. Maya tensed, but Jang made no threatening moves. Instead, he activated the screen and showed her a series of documents and photographs. 3 years ago, I was tasked with investigating the intelligence leak that led to the Operation Nightfall disaster. What I found was not a mole selling information for money. Maya studied the documents on the screen. Communication logs, financial records, meeting transcripts. As she read, a horrifying picture began to emerge. "The operation wasn't compromised by accident," Jang continued. "It was sabotaged deliberately by elements within both the American and Chinese command structures." "That's impossible." Goebbels Li Wei, the terrorist cell we were targeting, had been under observation for months by both intelligence services. They possessed no nuclear material. The entire operation was a fabrication, designed to eliminate a joint task force that had become too effective, too independent. Maya's hands trembled as she scrolled through the documents. Bank records showing payments to terrorist operatives. Communication intercepts revealing coordination between supposed enemies. Meeting notes discussing the Nightfall problem and the need for permanent solutions. "We were targeted for elimination," she whispered. "Our own command structures wanted us dead. You, specifically, were considered too dangerous to remain operational. Your skills, your knowledge, your independence made you a threat to certain interests within both militaries." The revelation hit Maya like a physical blow. 9 soldiers had died not because of greed or betrayal by outsiders, but because their own leaders had decided they were expendable. The mission she had devoted her life to serving had turned on her and her comrades like a viper. "Who else knows about this?" she asked. "Until recently, only myself and a small team of investigators. But in the past month, someone has been systematically eliminating everyone connected to the investigation." Zhang showed her photographs of crime scenes, obituary notices, accident reports, 7 people dead in 3 weeks. All members of his investigative team, all killed in ways that could be explained as accidents or random crimes. "You're next on their list," Zhang said quietly. "And so am I." Maya processed this information with the cold logic that had kept her alive through dozens of dangerous missions. Someone was cleaning house, eliminating witnesses to one of the most serious betrayals in military history. Why come to me? Why not go to the authorities? Because the authorities were involved in the original conspiracy. The only way to survive this is to expose it publicly, with enough evidence that they can't simply make us disappear. And you think I can help with that? Zhang's expression grew grim. "I think you're the only one who can. The American authorities have been protecting you, but they don't know what they're protecting you from. They think they're hiding you from foreign enemies when they should be hiding you from domestic ones." As if summoned by Zhang's words, Maya's phone buzzed with an incoming call. Captain Rodriguez's name appeared on the screen. "Maya, where are you?" Rodriguez's voice was tense when she answered. "We've got a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The kind where armed men in tactical gear are currently searching your apartment. You need to get to a safe location immediately." Maya looked at Zhang, who had overheard the conversation. The colonel nodded grimly.
"It's starting," he said. "They've decided to move against us."
"Rodriguez," Maya said into the phone, "I need you to listen carefully."
"I'm going to send you coordinates for a location. Bring Admiral Harrison and anyone else you trust completely. But come alone, no security details, no backup. If there are more than 3 of you, I'll disappear and you'll never see me again." "Maya, what's going on?" "The truth about Operation Nightfall. It's worse than anyone imagined." 2 hours later, Rodriguez and Admiral Harrison arrived at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Maya had chosen the location carefully, isolated, defensible, with multiple escape routes. Zhang had positioned himself as Overwatch, providing security while Maya handled the meeting. "Gentlemen," Maya said as they entered the warehouse, "I'd like you to meet Colonel Zhang Wei, formerly of Chinese Special Forces Intelligence." Rodriguez's hand moved instinctively toward his sidearm, but Admiral Harrison stopped him with a gesture. "Colonel Zhang," the Admiral said carefully, "you're supposed to be dead." "As is she," Zhang replied, nodding toward Maya. "Yet here we both are, very much alive and very much in danger." Zhang laid out his evidence methodically, walking the two Americans through 4 years of investigation and discovery. With each revelation, Rodriguez and Admiral Harrison grew more grim, more shocked by the scope of the conspiracy. "This is treason," Rodriguez said finally. "High-level treason by officials in both governments." "Yes," Zhang agreed, "but proving it while staying alive long enough to testify will be the challenge." Admiral Harrison studied the evidence carefully. "If this is accurate, then the people we've been protecting Maya from are the same people who have been protecting her." "Some of them, yes. The situation is more complex than anyone realized." Maya spoke for the first time since the briefing began. "Admiral, how many people know about my location and identity?" "Fewer than a dozen at the highest levels of naval intelligence." "And how many of them had access to the original Operation Nightfall intelligence?" The Admiral's face paled as he understood the implication. "At least half of them." "Then some of the people protecting me are the same people who tried to have me killed 4 years ago." The warehouse fell silent as the full scope of their predicament became clear. Maya was trapped in a web of protection and threat, unable to tell her allies from her enemies. "There's something else," Zhang said quietly. "The attacks on my investigation team began 3 weeks ago, just after American intelligence started asking questions about a mysterious marksmanship instructor at Blackwater." Rodriguez felt his blood turn to ice. "My inquiries triggered this?" "Phew. Your inquiries, the Admiral's investigation, Maya's growing visibility at the training facility. Someone decided the secret was becoming too exposed. So what do we do?" Maya asked. "Keep running forever? Hope they lose interest?" Zhang pulled out another device. This one? A satellite phone with military-grade encryption. "We go public. All of it. The evidence, the conspiracy, the betrayal. We release everything simultaneously to journalists in 6 different countries." "That's suicide," Admiral Harrison protested. "The moment that information goes public, every intelligence agency in the world will be hunting all of us." "They're hunting us anyway," Maya pointed out. "At least this way, we might expose the truth before they catch us." Rodriguez had been quiet during this exchange, but now he stood and walked to the window overlooking the empty parking lot outside. "There's another option," he said finally. "What's that?" "Use Maya as bait to draw out the people trying to kill her, and when they show themselves, we take them all down at once." Maya laughed bitterly. "That's your plan? Use me as live bait?" "Not alone. With full support, with backup, with every advantage we can give you. But yes, essentially. It could work. If we can identify the key players and eliminate them simultaneously, we might be able to end this without exposing classified operations." "Or we might all end up dead," Zhang observed. "That's a risk in any course of action," Rodriguez replied. "But this way, we control the when and where. We choose the battlefield." Maya considered the proposal. For 4 years, she had been running, hiding, living a life that wasn't really hers. The prospect of finally confronting her tormentors held a certain appeal. "What kind of trap?" she asked. Rodriguez outlined his plan. It was complex, dangerous, and required split-second timing, but it offered something that neither running nor going public could provide: the chance to permanently eliminate the threat while protecting the classified operations that hundreds of other soldiers depended on. "It's risky," Admiral Harrison admitted. "If we're wrong about who the conspirators are, if there are more of them than we think, if they have resources we don't know about, then we die," Maya finished. "But at least we die fighting instead of running." Li Wei always preferred direct action to passive defense. "So did the 9 soldiers who died 4 years ago," Maya replied. "Let's make sure their sacrifice finally means something."
They spent the next 6 hours planning every detail of the operation.
Maya would return to Blackwater as if nothing had changed, but her every move would be monitored by Rodriguez's team. When the conspirators made their move, they would find themselves facing not a helpless target, but a carefully prepared ambush. As dawn broke over the warehouse, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in 4 years: hope. Not just for survival, but for justice, for truth, for the possibility of reclaiming her stolen life. "One more thing," she said as they prepared to leave. "When this is over, when we've dealt with the conspirators and the truth comes out, I want my real name back." Rodriguez smiled. "Li Wei deserves that much." "Li Wei deserves a lot more than that, but it's a start." 3 days later, Maya conducted what would be her final marksmanship class at Blackwater. Jake Morrison and the other students gathered around as she demonstrated precision techniques they had come to expect from her. But today was different. Today, Maya wasn't just teaching shooting. She was saying goodbye to people who had become friends, to a life that had given her 4 years of peace, to an identity that had served its purpose but was no longer needed. "Remember," she told her students, "accuracy is about more than just hitting the target. It's about hitting the right target at the right time for the right reasons." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "Sounds like you're talking about more than shooting, Maya." "Maybe I am," she replied with a smile that held depths he couldn't fathom. That evening, as Maya packed her personal belongings from the small apartment she had called home, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. 4 years ago, she had lost everything: her identity, her country, her brothers and sisters in arms. Now, on the eve of the most dangerous mission of her life, she finally had a chance to reclaim what had been stolen from her. Tomorrow would bring the confrontation she had been preparing for since the day she learnt the truth about Operation Nightfall. The conspirators who had betrayed her unit, who had sent 9 soldiers to their deaths, who had spent 4 years hunting the survivors, would finally face justice. Maya completed her packing and took one last look around the apartment where Maya Chen had lived. Tomorrow, Li Wei would return to finish what had been started 4 years ago, and this time, she wouldn't be facing the enemy alone. As she drove through the night toward the confrontation that would determine her fate, Maya felt the weight of 4 years of hidden pain and suppressed anger settling into something cold and focused. The 9 soldiers who had died deserved justice. Colonel Zhang's murdered investigators deserved justice. She deserved the truth. Tomorrow, she would discover whether the skills that had kept her alive through countless missions would be enough to win her back the life she had lost. But whatever happened, she would face it as Li Wei, not as the shadow identity she had been forced to become. The final battle for Operation Nightfall was about to begin, and this time, Li Wei intended to win. They laughed at the silent sniper, until a Navy SEAL captain learned her true identity.